Liz Brown for KelownaNow, and I'm here with Andrew Weaver, leader of the BC Green Party. So Andrew, thanks for being here today.
Pleasure, thank you for having me.
All right, and so I'm just going to ask you a bit about why you're in town. You're endorsing a certain candidate, so tell me about that candidate.
Well, you know, we have an upcoming by-election. It's got to happen by early February. Probably going to be, the writ will be dropped early next week. And we've got an exceptional candidate, Robert Stupka, who's going to represent us in this upcoming election. And we've got a number of events to get people to know him. Big town hall tonight in West Bank Community Center, trying to get people to pose questions, get to know us. And
he's an engineer, is that right?
He is. He's an award-winning engineer. He was awarded a young, from the Association of Professional Engineers BC, a Young Professional of the Year type award for his community service and good work. He's a partner in Dito Design here, downtown Kelowna-based company. They do, I mean, this is the new economy, right?
Yeah.
They design passive houses, passive buildings. They build, they're developers, and not only that, they give you 3D virtual reality as you do walkthroughs the buildings before they're even built. It's it's really exciting, innovative stuff.
So this is normally a liberal majority area. So what are the chances of the Green Party winning?
Well, look, when I ran in 2013. There had been a 17-year sitting Liberal cabinet minister, Ida Chung. It's a traditional Liberal riding. In fact, even in that riding, Oak Bay Gordon Head, there was a Conservative. The last progressive Conservative was there, Scott Wallace, for quite a number of years. And when there was only one Conservative, look, I got over 40% first time, and I got over 50% this time. People in Kelowna West, the demographic is very similar to Oak Bay Gordon Head. They're informed voters. They're voters who think about politics, they take their politics seriously, and they're looking for a candidate that will represent them, not a candidate that will be there to tout the party line to the constituents, but a candidate who can actually take constituents' concerns and bring them to the political level.
So anything's possible, is what you're saying.
Yeah, not only that, we're going all in here. We believe we have a real opportunity here in Kelowna West. It's an exciting opportunity. Kelowna West residents want to have influence and want better chance than we have an exceptional candidate at a time when the BC Greens hold the balance of power in a minority coalition, and a Kelowna West candidate will be right in there in that balance of power.
Okay, well, let's talk about that. So last spring you did sign a confidence in supply agreement with the NDP, and so that allows you to hold the NDP government accountable, but you're also keeping them in power.
Yes.
So how have the last 7 months or so been?
Well, to start off, I bet there's some people who were quite surprised that we actually did sign a good agreement with the BC NDP. I had a very difficult time working in opposition with the BC NDP, and I had a very good time working with the BC Liberals in terms of trying to advance public policy over the previous 4 years. But when it came to the election, it was pretty clear to us, and pretty clear to, frankly, I see it here in Kelowna. People wanted to change. They wanted to change, and they wanted to put the BC Liberals in a timeout. And to do that, we had a choice, and our choice was to put people first. Now, John and I came together as people who had not really gone on very well over the last few years. But
still not always.
No. What I'll say is we both care about people and public policy. And in those meetings, I came out of them really getting to know him and really getting to like him. So we've had a very good working relationship over the last few months. There's been some testy times, sight see down, obviously, but at the end of the day, we agree to disagree. We act like grown-ups. We don't pick up our bat and ball and walk home and say, let's have another election. And we'll continue to do what we've been doing for the last 6 months.
So what is your move with Site C? So they have said that they would move forward, and that's something you've been opposed to. And so what can you do there?
Well, so we haven't given up. Right off the bat, it's the wrong decision. You're going to see it. It's going to actually play out quite interestingly in this riding too. So just to give people in Kelowna context, if you're on this side of the bridge, you're paying 20% more in your hydro because you're using Fortis right now, and you're probably pretty grumpy about that because in West Kelowna you're paying 20% less than BC Hydro. Let me tell you that the people on this side are going to be very pleased that they are on this side, because BC Hydro rates have got to go up dramatically, because this decision, which is going to end up costing a dam, is going to cost $15 billion when all is said and done. It's 10.7 now. It was 6 a few years ago. It's going to cause fit rates to increase by 50 to 100%. There's no way about it, because you've got to pay for this somehow, and who pays for it? The ratepayer. And the reason why it's reckless is because we know that there's no market for the power, so it's going to have to be sold on the spot market at 3.5 cents to 4 cents a kilowatt hour, losing literally 10 cents kilowatt hour for every kilowatt that the dam produces. So that's the problem with it. Now, what can we do about it? We haven't given up. Right now, we understand there's very substantive and significant problems with the stability of the North Slope, which are creating issues in terms of worker safety. A lot of stuff is slowing down, if not ground to a halt in the area because of that. We're going to continue to push the NDP to have a look at their decision, to recognize that it's that from an economic perspective, it's outrageous that we're moving forward, and hopefully they will see that. So we haven't given up.
Okay.
I don't give up.
You don't. I see that.
Yeah, no,
so what other challenges has there been working with the NDP? What other?
Well, we come from very different backgrounds. We're a very much business oriented party. We're very much focused on fiscal sustainability. We believe quite strongly that you have to live within your means. We've taken some very hard positions on some of their, what I would call, populist vote buying policies. We pushed them on removing the tolls on the bridges. Yeah. We campaigned on keeping those tolls there. Unfortunately, the BC Liberals and the BC NDP both are pandering for votes, and they both promised to remove those tolls. That's not good public policy, and you in Kelowna now are paying for this kind of populist approach to score a few votes in the Fraser Valley out in Vancouver. So we pushed them on that, freezing BC hydro rates. Now that, again, sounds great and populist, but they actually didn't do it, but it's also irresponsible. Yeah. Because if you're going to freeze rates and you're going to build sites and ease it down, where's the money going to come from? It doesn't grow on trees. So we continue to push them on that. The minimum wage, you'll probably hear in the next couple of weeks, NDP campaign on a slogan, $15 an hour minimum wage. Well, what business needs is not a slogan, they need certainty. So what we've pushed them to, and we've got success, is that we've created a Fair Wage Commission, which will be reporting out very soon on a pathway to increase minimum wage in the years ahead that removes politics from that and gives business the certainty they need to make the decisions.
Yeah, businesses were pretty upset about that. Do you think they're moving forward, they're going to feel better?
I think that you'll find, that it's something like 4% of British Columbians earn minimum wage. So it's not the bigger businesses. It's kind of the restaurant industry, some aspects of that, and some aspects of smaller businesses where grocery stores and things like that. But I think that business recognizes that you're starting to see it here in Kelowna. In Victoria right now, there's help wanted everywhere because the wages are low and people aren't taking it. So there is already a market pressure to increase minimum wage, and there's a gap. So I think that if what business cares about is certainty, they don't want a big, like Ontario, they go from $12 to $14, boom, in one big sledgehammer. Having a much more gradual, progressive rate that takes us rapidly to a proper wage is what business can absorb, and they'll be fine with it.
What about? I mean, there have been some things you have been happy about with the new government. So, what are a couple of victories so far?
I think there's a couple of things that you can thank the BC Greens for. The fact right now that everyone's MSP premium has been reduced by 50%, you can directly peg that to BC Greens. Introducing that into the legislature a number of years ago, as my office and I spent a ton of time trying to bring awareness to British Columbians that this regressive approach to taxation, it's like a head tax, everyone pays the same amount, was not reflective of kind of how we should be funding healthcare. And that's now we got a 50% cut on that. We'll continue to push for its elimination, recognizing that it's a very regressive form of taxation, and again to push for a progressive form of taxation. So that's something we're happy that we've got that. We now, again, I think you can feel quite comfortable we feel very comfortable taking a ton of credit for the elimination of union and corporate donations in both local, civic, municipal, provincial elections. They're gone. No more will you see the Wild West, no more will the New York Times be writing about us being the Wild West out here where anybody anywhere in the world can donate any money to any political party to any time they want. Now it's much more regulated like everywhere else in Canada. So we're quite excited about that too.
Now, so many might not know your background as a climate scientist and quite a lot of work in that area. So tell us a bit about your background first of all.
Right. So
prior to politics.
Yeah, I taught at the University of Victoria. I have a PhD in mathematics at UBC. I born in Victoria, raised in Victoria. My wife was born in Victoria, raised in Victoria. We lived all over the world, and when we wanted to have a family, we came back to Victoria because for us, the most important thing for us was family, and we moved to Victoria so that our two kids could grow up with their grandparents, and we're still alive today, and it's just been wonderful. So I'm a huge fan of BC. We live in the most beautiful part of the world, and I was also a strong supporter of some of Mr. Gordon Campbell's policies with respect to climate leadership, recognizing that in every challenge is an enormous opportunity. So his focus was on positioning British Columbia as an economic leader in the opportunities that are arising from dealing with greenhouse gas emissions. And it did. The whole tech explosion that we had in BC largely can be attributed to some of the good work and signal that the market was given back in the Gordon Campbell times. Along came the change in administration and a focus on LNG, which was so unrealistic. It was never going to happen. Again, I've been saying that for 4 years. I stood alone in the legislature saying, I don't know how you're going to squeeze water from a stone, but if you squeeze harder, it's still not going to come out. And we were missing out on opportunities. I could not stand by as somebody who had taught in universities for years and years and talked about the opportunities associated with greenhouse gas reduction, talk about the fact that the rest of the world is actually seizing this opportunity and we're not, and then watch the dismantling of Gordon Campbell's policies. So I ran with the party.
Yeah, because so you were in Australia, is that right?
In 1988, I was in Australia.
Studied there. Was that a PhD? That you
No,
did
I had my PhD at that point. I was working at the University of New South Wales as what's called a postdoctoral researcher. So doing research on, at the time it was on a couple of things. There's a Lewin current was an interesting current off the offshore and its implication for fisheries.
Yeah, and then so you had a background in math and physics and science, and then all of a sudden you switched to politics. So what happened there?
Yeah, that's like
that's a pretty.
You know, I was a guy in high school who I couldn't talk in front of crowds. I couldn't sit in front of a class and give a lecture.
Yeah.
You know, obviously as a teacher, you get more comfortable with that. But I watch Big Bang Theory like religiously, and I see myself. Right, this is my life.
Yeah.
I not Sheldon Cooper, mind you. But
no, that's not your
that's not my life.
Who would you be?
I would be
Howard.
Leonard.
Oh, Leonard?
Howard? No, I don't live with my mother.
Great. Well, I don't know.
Leonard, a little more,
right.
progressive, still nerdy, but a little more wise to streetwise.
Sure.
But anyway, so I started out in particle physics actually.
Yeah.
So I resonate to the whole. I worked in Triumph in Vancouver,
Yeah.
Daisy at Deutsche Elektron and Synchrotron in Germany. And went to Cambridge to do a master's in particle physics, and well, here I am in.
It's quite the resume. And
DC politics.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, but.
So what do you think you can accomplish in politics that you couldn't in that field of science?
Well, exactly. I could not, as a climate scientist, I just couldn't face writing more papers on this issue that I know a little bit about. And
that no one else was reading, only in the academic.
Well, the academic field. You have scientists standing out and saying we need to deal with this problem, and then we have government leaders standing up and saying, "Look what we're doing with this problem," and realizing that you don't get it.
Yeah.
People don't get this issue. It is a huge challenge, greenhouse gas reduction, particularly for your generation, not mine. I mean, look, when I'll give a simple example, and this is what I say in the courses, and it's part of the story why I got into politics, is global warming is irrelevant to me as an individual, because any consequences, any change that's going to happen in the climate system over the next 2 decades is already in the cards through the inertia in our socio-economic systems. That is, we don't build coal factories today to tear them down tomorrow. We don't build.
It's not a light switch.
No. But what matters is that, and so we know that the warming in store for the next couple of decades is really in the cards because of our existing structures. But however, the decisions we make today have a profound effect on where we are tomorrow, your generation, your children's generation. And so the whole issue of global warming boils down to an issue of intergenerational equity. Do we, the present generation, believe we owe anything to future generations in terms of the quality of the environment we leave behind? If we don't believe that intergenerational equity matters, then global warming is an irrelevant problem, because it's like, let's live today, forget about tomorrow. But if we do, we know that we must make difficult decisions today, because the ramifications of those decisions play out in the decades to come. And frankly, as you get towards the end of the century, it's very serious if we don't make the right decisions today. Now, I happen to have kids. I do believe in intergenerational equity is critical. I could not write yet another scientific paper, publish it in the journals, go to more meetings and talk to scientists about how we know this problem, we've been studying this for many, many years, and listen to people do nothing about it. And I you can complain. A lot of people complain. very, very common to complain, but again, in science, I always say to my students, look, you can complain all you want, but unless it's constructive, it's easy to criticize. Do something positive. What would you do instead? So that was my choice.
Right.
My choice was that I'm not writing papers on climate. It's too depressing to write more of these and saying, we've got to deal with this problem because here's what will happen. I said, I'll do something about it. And look where we are. We're in a balance of power in a minority government. It was pretty clear if you look at the confidence supply agreement, we have some pretty progressive approach to climate change here in BC. But not only that, it's not about, people think it's about, the environment, it's going to sacrifice the economy. It's about recognizing the incredible opportunities that are there as we transition our energy systems from those that are polluting to those that aren't. Everything around us is involved in that economic change, and that's how you get economic growth. Through innovation, through increasing efficiency, that leads to economic growth. More of the same, digging dirt out of the ground or somehow thinking we're going to build an economy, it's like backwards thinking. And that's why I'm so excited about this by-election here in Kelowna West, is that you have people who are politically astute. They get the importance of the economy. They get the opportunities here. They may not think intergenerational equity is important as perhaps I do, but they recognize that we need to start doing things differently, and chasing the unicorn or the rainbow, a pot of gold at the end of the LNG rainbow, has not served BC very well. In fact, it's done the opposite in terms of intergenerational equity, because in your generation, I mean, frankly, it's been irresponsible. You're going to pay for the reckless BC Liberal decision and then NDP decision to build a Site C dam, which is going to end up at $15 billion, to produce power, which is going to cost 15 cents a kilowatt hour, to sell on the spot market in the US because there is no market for it, which is going to be sold at about 4 or 5 cents a kilowatt hour, which is going to be 3 times less than it cost to produce it. And the reason why it was being built in the first place was to deliver into LNG contracts, where they promised LNG proponents electricity at 5.3 cents a kilowatt hour. So they promised LNG proponents that they would pay half the rate you and I pay if they come to BC, but they're still not here. And they couldn't deliver into it because they didn't have capacity unless they built Site C. I mean, this is liberal economics. Now,
I can see you're not going to give up.
Oh no, I haven't given up. Look, I can't. It's all about intergenerational equity. The NDP are arguing, we can amortize it over 70 years. What they're really saying is your generation is going to pay for our stupid mistake today, and we're not going to wear it right now.
So this past spring has really put the Green Party in the spotlight.
BC Green Party.
Yeah, exactly.
I like to
the
say
BC Green Party.
We are not affiliated formally with the Federal Green Party, and it's important because in BC, we have within our party a lot of federal Liberals who look at the BC Liberals and say, you're not Liberal. And so we have a very strong component of federal.
My apologies.
No apologies necessary.
So,
it's just, I just like to distinguish. Yeah.
So it's an interesting time for the BC Green Party. And do you think that has something to do with you, its leader, a little bit? Are people changing? Is the identity of the Green Party, BC Green Party, evolving?
I let the pundits determine how our successes come. I don't know what component is because people want change, and I don't like.
But would you say that the identity has changed over the years?
Oh, there's no question that
it's still possibly evolving.
Well, it is. I think there's an awareness now, a greater awareness, particularly in light of the amazing time we're in right now with balanced power and a minority government, is that people are recognizing that they have thought. I mean, we had this. There were preconceptions and there were stereotypes. People. Pot smoking, tree hugging, dreadlocks.
Yeah.
I wish I could have dreadlocks, but.
So that's not the BC Green Party.
That's not the BC Green Party. It never has been actually. Jane Stirk before me was she was a small C conservative. I think if you looked at the 2017 campaign, we campaigned on the economy, on the opportunities that exist. That's why we have such strong endorsement by the tech community here. Club Penguin, one of the former guys who started that, Dave Crisco, came up supporting Alison Shaw in the last campaign. BC Green talked about our economic platform and how thrilled he was with our innovation agenda. Same thing he's doing with Rob Stuka. So we have a lot of support from because our whole economic platform is built on innovation, and innovation starts at the lab bench. It starts and creating the environment for innovation and entrepreneurs to actually get successful. the way we've had is, over the last few years is very much of a top-down model, whereby government decide this is picks winners and losers. We're going to do LNG, and you're the winning company. So, and then tries to squeeze that round peg into a square hole, or a square peg into a round hole. It's easier to do a round hole. and so our approach.
Come on, Leonard.
Yeah, exactly. So our I should start doing this actually with my hands. We're trying to get the message of our strong economic vision for British Columbia. To summarize it, what we're doing, or have been recently doing in BC, is governments thinking LNG. Let's do this. Is the direction. Yeah. They don't realize that an economy, a role of government is to recognize the strategic advantages that we have here in BC that no one else in the world has, and allow the market to evolve, but create the environment that allows them to do that. And what are those three strategic strengths that we have? Number one, we are, without any question, the most beautiful place in the world to live. And Kelowna, the Okanagan here, is one of the most beautiful parts of the most beautiful.
Bad.
I know, I'll come here for vacation every summer. So number one, strategic strength. Number two, you look at the international assessments. Despite all the grumblings, we have one of the top, if not the top, education systems in the world. We rank right at the very top internationally on math, reading, writing assessments. And so we can offer business a very highly skilled and educated workforce that we can attract and retain because of the quality of life that we can offer here. And number three, we have access to boundless renewable energy, fiber, that's wood, and water. No one else can compete with us in those three strategic areas. LNG, everybody can do horizontal fracking and access their shale formations. But nobody can offer what we can offer. And that is the foundation for a strong economy, is to recognize that we should be attracting the BMWs to BC. Why are they going to Washington to build carbon fiber manufacturing plants there? They don't need to be in Washington. They should be in here. They went to Washington because they wanted to attract a highly skilled workforce, get access to clean, cheap, renewable power, because they brand themselves as a company of the 21st century, non-polluting company. They should be in Terrace or in the Okanagan here. We've got a rail line between Prince Rupert and Chicago, which is the gateway to Asia and the gateway to Eastern Canada, which we seem to think should only be used to ship, Asian containers to Chicago and raw logs out to Asia and raw products to Asia.
Right.
We should have a manufacturing center that's by positioning on that rail line, that's positioning and offering access to cheap renewable energy that will allow people to actually build widgets, whether it be the BMWs of this world, and ship it to the markets, rather than just having the train track to take from here to there. We should be having here and sending from here to there. But again, it requires government not to pick winners and losers, but to say, we recognize what our strategic advantages are. Let's let innovation happen and create a business-friendly environment to encourage investment in BC in a diversified way, not just all in on LNG.
Okay. We're short on time here. I have two more
I give
questions.
long answers.
That's
I'm
okay.
so sorry.
That's okay. So just two final questions. One, just about July 1st, 2018.
Yeah.
Thoughts around that date and
Well, I
how
know
the government's kind of getting all the steps right. Will they be ready?
July 1st, 2018, I'm sure your readers, or your listeners here, and readers as well, but are going to wonder why that date. Well, that date, of course, is the date that Trudeau's legalization of marijuana is going to come to play. This is what we're pushing for is this has not been an agenda we've been campaigning on, but this is what we push for, is to recognize what we have in BC, which is a craft industry here that we want to nurture, prepare, and regulate appropriately. We do approve of the means and ways of distribution that has been proposed by the BC NDP through the liquor distribution branch. We strongly oppose the selling of marijuana products in the same location as spirits and liquors. We believe that they are separate and they should be sold separately. And so, we will be coming out quite strongly against if government proposes having craft cannabis sections of liquors. What are your main
reasons for that?
It incentivizes indirectly the thoughts that it's okay to consume alcohol and take cannabis at the same time. I think, let the craft cannabis industry be dealt with over here, and let the craft, the liquor and spirits be over here. There are people within our society who, including my mother, for example, and my mother's generation, her friends, who feel quite affronted that cannabis is being legalized, and I think, and I respect that, and I understand that, and this really is in their face, and they also don't believe quite strongly. It's listening to people. You don't want to. It's it's the reason why we don't sell cigarettes in pharmacies. Like you don't have cigarettes in a pharmacy anymore because it makes no sense to encourage selling cigarettes while you're taking at the same time encouraging cessation or medicine to overcome the effects of smoking. So we're that's the main reason. Mr. Farnworth, Minister Solicitor General, has said it'll consume a lot of our upcoming legislative agenda. I shake my head in sadness when he says that, because there is more to happening in BC than just cannabis legislation. I certainly will be very, very unhappy if all we're talking about is cannabis in the spring session, because for most British Columbians it's not a relevant issue, but for some it's very important, and we know we have to do it. But let's go beyond the cannabis.
You're saying it shouldn't be any bigger than some of the other issues.
It's compared to affordability. This is a massive issue. If the BC NDP had better start, putting in place the actions that they promised in the campaign that we've been waiting for, somewhat patiently, mind you, to deal with speculation in our housing market. I look at Kelowna here and Victoria, and I see parallels. The parallels are this: is that people in Metro Van sell their single-family home on the east side of Vancouver or somewhere for multiple millions of dollars. Come to Kelowna, say, hey, $1 million, I get kind of a nice place. 1.5 million, that's good. So drive your prices up, and they pocket at $1.5 million, live nicely for here. But people who are growing up here and wanting to work here now are beginning to see an affordability issue. Victoria, it's a crisis. You're starting to see, it's small, certainly important though, a homeless issue beginning to emerge in Kelowna. It's
there. Yeah.
There's no question it's there. I mean, when we look at Victoria now, compared to, we're beginning to get in Victoria an emergence of a crisis that is getting closer and closer to what we see in downtown Eastside Vancouver, and that's just unacceptable. And that happens when you start to let you start to forget about it's the safety net for those who are at the lower end of our, and you start to pay for this in other social costs.
Right. Yeah. So that kind of leads into the final question. Looking ahead, what are the BC Green goals for 2018 and the next few years?
So there's quite a number of things. We one of the things that the BCNDP embedded into our confidence and supply agreement was the Innovation Commission and the Emerging Economy Task Force. These are still nurturing below the surface, and we expect and hope to see very, very soon an actual emergence of that, and see the emergence of the innovative economy pathway forward that we brought to the BCNDP. They were in our, they didn't campaign really on an economic agenda. Their economic agenda was building schools and hospitals. Well, that's nice, but that's also precarious. So our innovative agenda has been adopted by them in our agreement, and we're excited to see that start to take off. We should, there's the issue of affordability is something we've spent a lot of time on, trying to
subsidized housing.
Well, no, not so much subsidized housing. It's a supply and demand issue. The supply side, everyone's focused on the supply side. The problem is the demand side in British Columbia. When I say demand, it's not you or I, it's the demand from speculative money offshore that's just flowing into Vancouver, because we have a very tumultuous economy out there in the world, and people are looking for a safe haven to dump their cash. The safe haven is BC real estate, in particular Metro Van real estate. My riding, where I live, I had a 25% increase in, over 20% increase in property values. And that's driven by Vancouver people, when that in Vancouver is being driven by offshore money coming in. Sometimes, in odd ways. So
you'd like to take that foreign buyers tax and
we'd extend it, we'd increase it, speculation tax, start targeting specifically. I think we need to start the discussion about who can actually buy property, certain types of property in BC. We look at Australia, we look at Britain, New Zealand, numerous examples where very, very strong steps have been taken in some cases to even disallow non-tax-paying resident ownerships. You come here on a work visa, you're working in BC, you're paying taxes in BC, you have the right to own property in BC. But I don't think it's right for, in my neighborhood in Victoria or Vancouver, for somebody living in some other country to own 10 houses and to leave them vacant. And if people don't think this is going on, I have personal stories. I had 2 constituents come in and they said they were really, really upset because their 2 businessmen had come over with a friend that they knew, and they'd each bought 5 houses, and they went back home, and those houses are vacant, and they were there simply to park money as an investment.
Wow, okay.
And that is, that creates
Yeah.
an affordability crisis because it drives the price up. Then it creates a rental crisis because capacity is taken out. And then, so rather than solving, building more supply, that's not actually dealing with the fundamental issue, which issue is housing is something that's, it's for living in. It's not a commodity. It is not gold or it is not, a stock for trading, publicly trading. It's a place
Well, it's
to live
hard
in.
to argue when it can be one of the most stable investments a person can make.
Oh, well, I agree, but it's a stable investment. But where it starts to get problematic is when you use it as a speculative investment. So if you have a development in Kelowna here, and I see and the reason why, again, we can use simple economic language. If we're not internalizing the externalities associated with how our housing stock is being used as a speculative tool, we're not paying the true cost of buying that house.
Yeah.
That is, when you treat housing as a speculative commodity, there is a social cost in terms of affordability, in terms of homelessness, in terms of judicial costs associated with homelessness, mental health services, etc. That the rest of us have to pay for. So what we should be saying is that that if you're going to have that speculative component of housing, you should be paying that externality, that social cost, in terms of it, which is why speculation taxes, foreign buyers taxes, etc., are important to bring in order to ensure that there's an external component of the cost associated with that being borne by those creating that problem.
Right.
And that's the approach that we've been pushing in our electoral campaign.
Okay, yeah.
Not recognizing that when you buy a home to live in, it's an important investment for your future, and you grow the house, your home value as you move. As your family grows, and then as you retire, often you get smaller, and so you accumulate equity, and then you start to use it and we recognize that.
I do have one more question. I know I said that was the last question, I promise. So you have the ability to play a card
Yes.
and topple the government.
Yes.
Would you ever use it?
We have no intention to do that. We have every intention in showing British Columbians that politics can be done differently here. I know at times it's tough. It's tough, but we are elected to govern. We are not elected to play political games. We've had enough of that, photo ops and political games, frankly, for the last decades in BC. We are elected to govern. We are committed to working as hard as we can to ensure that we represent people, and we have a huge, rather than call it balance of power, we have a huge burden of responsibility to ensure that we are responsible in the way we, as the 3 Greens representing 17% of British Columbians, operate in the legislature. I'm hoping it'll be 4, and that would,
It's a nice finish there.
It is. I'm hoping it'll be 4.
Okay, thanks so much, Andrew.
Real pleasure.
Appreciate
Thank
it.
you.
Yeah. And for Kelowna Now, this is Liz Brown, and I've been speaking with Andrew Weaver.